This is the Brain Software Podcast, episode 200, originating in the hypnotic world epicenter, Toronto, Canada. And today we talk all about us. So hang in there.
Here's the disclaimer for you. Warning, we will be consuming Strongbow cider in this podcast, and it contains alcohol, but we admit it, so it's okay.
Hey, Scro. What's happening, Becker? Can't believe we made it to number 200. We're all celebrating off here. So grab a glass of your favorite booze and sidle up to the counter pouch, because we built this city on rock and roll, man. It's all going down, and I'm right in the middle of it. And since today I make a full $30 for asking the question, I'm going to pay Brado $20 to say it and pocket the change bag. So here goes. Take it away, Scro. How are you tonight? Thanks once again. Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to enjoy and love up in Meaford and that?
These are effing days of victory. I read it wrong. These are effing days of victory. So let's welcome to the virtual Alligator Bar, Orleans Hotel, Las Vegas, Nevada, the world's foremost April Fool, the king of context-free humor.
I said that once.
And the Keith Richards of hypnosis.
Okay, we're going to drop that one.
Mike Mandel.
Yes, Chris, pour a smooth one. No,
we are not witches.
We're not witches. This is the start of podcast 200, and we are having Strongbow cider, which is the official drink of the British Jiu-Jitsu system. I haven't even started on it.
We're drinking them out of Stella glasses because the only
is
two
that
I
empty?
have in the
I'm
house
just
that
going to
are
chuck
matched.
mine in the chuckery.
I think you should do that.
Stella glass is nice. I'm going to have a sip. Chris, let's have a toast here right now.
All right, hold on.
To all this stuff
really comes out.
Let's have a toast to all of our listeners who followed us these ridiculous
200
years
episodes.
with some real content and a lot of crap.
Cheers to you.
Here's to you guys, but mostly here's to us.
Mostly here's to us. I just caught that.
Oh.
That's hilarious. Okay.
Oh, man. That's fabulous. Now,
Strongbow's awesome. We hardly ever drink this stuff.
We said welcome to the virtual Alligator Bar, Orleans Hotel.
Why are we saying that?
Well, today is April Fool's Day as we're recording this. We still have 35 minutes before you're supposed to stop. I have never gone by that rule of stopping at noon. I think that was just...
You're looking at yourself
I'm
in the
enjoying
monitor.
looking at myself in the monitor. I have never gone by that stupid rule of you stop at noon. That was invented by a parent or something. But
I think you're right. It's not a real rule. It's like,
not.
Johnny, stop playing jokes on me. It's afternoon. That April Fool's is over.
It's over. And they add this stupid line. Anyone who does it afternoon is the biggest fool of all. Yeah, bite my freaking wand. Here's the bottom. Oh, it's working already.
Yeah.
Here's the bottom line. I like to take the entire month of April for jokes and jokery. And I urge you to do the same.
And it nearly ends with your birthday, the biggest joke of all.
That's right, man. 29th of April, I'll be 69 freaking years completed, meaning I'll be starting my 70th year, which really bites the wand, but not in a good way.
Okay.
So let's talk about this, man. The virtual Alligator Bar, New Orleans Hotel. That's our favorite bar in the world.
Yeah, we very much miss hanging out in Las Vegas. So
we could be back.
We discovered the Alligator Bar the first year that we went to Hypno Thoughts Live. HTLive.net. There's your free promotion. We do not get paid to recommend that you come to that conference.
Although
we're planning on being there this year.
Yes, and we want to be back at Hypno Thoughts Live at the end of July, beginning of August 2022. Hope to see you guys there. The dynamic duo of Hypnosis will be there, just having a blast. So let's talk about some content here, Chris.
Okay.
Yes, it's true, we're not witches. Today, we're giving you almost no solid hypnosis or NLP.
We'll sneak some stuff in.
We probably can't resist. He insisted. But we will examine the people, the stupid lines, the self-indulgent comedy, and the nonsensical mosaic that has become the Shizjig universe. Now,
you want to credit the creator
Steve
of that
Watts,
term?
who's a Louisiana sheriff's deputy, a very close friend of ours, and he has a great sense of humor, and he loves the podcast. And he said it is the Shizjig universe. All these weird things have started to come in and then interlock over the years. And I'm reluctant to talk about it too much because then it sounds, aren't we funny?
It's very meta.
Right. It's very meta. But hey,
what is the Shizjig universe?
Well, let's get the backstory. How did brain software even start?
Okay, so how did the brain software, this is probably the only business part of the discussion we'll have today.
Yeah, so let's make it brief.
So We started the Brain Software
disenfranchised
podcast.
myself.
What year was it, Mike? Was it
I don't know,
2000?
man.
I remember
Touch my face
because
after disenfranchising
I
myself.
left my job as a stock analyst in 2011, going off to France for that summer for 10 weeks. And I believe it was when I came back in around August of 2011. I think I said to you something like, we need to start a podcast. And I believe we started around 2012. The reason we started this podcast is I noticed at the time, podcasts weren't as popular as they are now, but they were still very popular. And there was nothing really good in the hypnosis field. And I thought, well, we could do a podcast where at the time I thought I would just ask you a lot of questions and you would answer them and people would discover what a genius you are.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
And go, oh, I want to go and take his hypnosis class, because we weren't even teaching classes
Not
together
yet.
at the time. We did not have the Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. Shout out to our wonderful MMHA Engage members. They're our awesome community, like our global family. But I decided I'm going to pitch you on this idea. We should do a podcast together. We'll talk about hypnosis.
Yeah.
It'll be fascinating.
And I said, well, what's this going to be like? I wasn't into podcasting.
Yeah.
And you said, it's kind of like having our own radio show to the world.
And you said, damn, I'm in.
He's right, damn him.
And I remember we did our first episode. We replaced the intro. I think
it was
we
painful.
replaced the intro because it was bad. But I think this is the way our podcast started. It's like, hi, welcome to the Brain Software Podcast. Yes, I'm Chris Thompson. And you said, oh, yeah,
and I'm Mike Mandel, and
this
we're
is
going to be
be
talking about hypnosis.
This is going to be really interesting.
It was dry as freaking dust.
If you go back to listen to the first episodes,
it was terrible.
We had not found our voices.
Yes.
It's like,
imagine, the groove, man.
Do you ever think about jamming with other musicians? Like you're playing guitar. If you know someone well and you've jammed with them a bunch, you can
know where you're going
back and forth. And it took us a while to get there.
A couple of years.
And eventually,
no, not really. But we started adding a little bits of stupidity as we went. And
at your insistence.
Well, yeah, because listen, guys, I love teaching, but I also, through the Brain Software podcast, this has given me the outlet for my own peculiar humor.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying all my humor is great. I'm just saying I have a real heart for context-free humor.
You do.
Where the person cannot make sense of what you're saying because there is no sense.
There is no sense.
And you're looking at them as though there should be a sense to it. So that became all these characters and that we'll get into in a minute. But you know what I got for us, Chris? Actual think tank words.
Oh, my goodness.
This.
Okay, this is going to be great because I'm going to take everything I was about to say and use it here. All right, so first one.
Okay, so think tank words, we graphed in and mapped them and
we're picking these three words to see how they fit into
how they
context.
fit or don't.
They create unconscious creativity.
First one is prize.
Okay, prize. Well, to me, buddy,
so I'm gonna sip more of
this podcast is a freaking prize. The prize that I got from realizing that it doesn't need to be all serious. When you add more humor to it, the learning becomes more fun. So I was at one end of the extreme end of the spectrum. I was the freaking serious. Let's do serious podcast. You would just want to joke all the time and give zero content.
Well, yeah, pretty much.
And
but this is the guy.
And in the middle is the best.
The sweet spot.
That's the prize.
You got to remember the pull to do the humor. When this is the guy who spends 5 hours on the freaking computer because he was trying to replace his toaster to this 6-slice thing.
What?
It's just like, scary. I think I was doing context-free humor. Okay, so what is the prize? This is the prize.
Is that we came together, met in the middle on this. That, to me, that's what it makes me think of is the power of mutual benefit. Everyone benefits. We all benefit. It's freaking great.
Right, okay, so this is the prize.
What does prize
the podcast is the prize for us. What about goulash?
What the hell does that even mean?
Hungarian goulash. It's the food, the big, wide, flat noodles with could be ground beef. And it's
I'm
actually
a low
pretty good.
carb guy, except today. Goulash. Okay, so it's a thick noodle.
Yeah, it's a spicy sort of beef stew. You like it. It's like a beef stew made with thick noodles.
Well, you know what that makes me think of? An email that I recently sent out to our email list about how we were talking about life, and life can be like a bunch of spaghetti, right?
Or a box of chocolates.
It came from a box of chocolates. Okay, that was a song Mike was singing
just give me this warning.
No.
If you eat a box of chocolates, don't go and look in the mirror right afterwards. There's a reason for that.
That's so horrible.
My itching nose.
Goulash. So we were talking about spaghetti, and you said, I think we were talking about Slack, because we use Slack as like a team communication
application. It's a pain in the ass. It's so complicated.
Mike goes, Slack, it just seems like a bunch of spaghetti.
It's so complicated.
And then somebody had said about how life feels like a big plate of spaghetti, big mess, the idea being a mess. And I realized that actually, even though it does look like a big freaking mess, it's very easy to disentangle, to take one or two noodles out and deal with them independently. So Goulash makes me think about how even messy things you can strip
can still
out.
manage to turn out wrong. Now, what about coin?
What the heck word is this?
It's a word. I don't know.
Not
coin
G.
or coin.
Q-U-O-I-N.
Okay, I'm going to have to, let me look it up right now.
Yeah, he's going to look it up.
Because we are online all the time.
Okay, so Q-U, it's coin, but spelled with a Q-U instead of a C.
It's too damn small to see because I thought I wouldn't need my glasses. Let's see what it means. There it is, Chris. It means... Read that.
Okay.
Oh, an external angle.
I read it as eternal. An external angle of a wall or a building. So like an external corner.
Okay.
There you go. Like a brick wall, like the one we've got here behind us.
Right. He's right. So we have, this is a
coin.
Mm-hmm. We could put a coin on it. Now, how does that apply?
External angle.
I know what it is. I know what it is. We may be having this wonderful cider on the air right now. But we want you to know that if you come to Toronto, there's always a coin here for you.
That's so weird. We'll see how that fits. I have a sneaking suspicion it won't.
Okay,
we got to get into the
we said the early days were way too serious. Now, a lot came out of the context-free humor. But remember, it sort of started with me, context-free humor. I can trace back to this guy, Larry, I went to high school with, who was hilarious.
Okay.
I told you, he always got me to skip off. So I'd have an exam, I'd have a test or something.
Holiday.
And I'd walk to Ralph's house. He'd get Ralph.
Holiday Larry.
We'd go to Larry's. He'd answer the door with a party hat on, the noisemaker, like it was New Year's Eve, and say, New Year's Eve, say, holiday today. We say, Larry, I can't skip off. I got to go, holiday. And, all right, we go and hang out in his basement. I'd listen to King Crimson and stuff and do other weird things that people were doing in the 60s, none of which is illegal now, by the way. Now, interestingly, so when back in the days of cannabis and that, before it was legal, now it is Canada-wide legal. But the context-free humor, Larry had this thing he would say. He'd tell people he barely knew that he had a pet cat called Corky that wore his own blue jeans and with a little pocket, and he had a tiny comb in the pocket. And he said, and I taught him to comb his whiskers. And he'd say this, here's the best part. He'd say, and when he was finished, he would offer you his comb.
Comb.
And people would look at him like, well, I thought, this is freaking brilliant comedy. Because it makes no sense, right? So that's how it started. Now, then one day I brought in my ukulele and started singing
Riders on the Storm.
And then it turned into there's a big hypnotic storm. There's a giant effing storm.
And that turned into the Storm Riders.
The Hypnotic Storm Riders.
Which is actually still on a shirt to this day.
And people started saying, I want to be a Hypnotic Storm Rider. We ride the Hypnotic Storm. We burn scripts and that people read at people. Scripts are good for a purpose, but not that. We're dealing with crap teaching all these. We were way more aggressive than now. Everybody's our friends, so we love them. But we are the Hypnotic Storm Riders. Yes, Alligator Bar, Hypnothoughts
taught us the power of bridge building
and connection.
Having friends is way better than thinking everyone else out there is just a dick.
Yeah,
right?
Which is
and
kind of
some dicks.
It was me more than you who thought that.
Awesome
there
people.
are some, but none of our friends. We are great friends. Now, we started saying we'll edit that out because I think it was because we started telling people they were dicks and stuff. And you say, you can't say that. We used to say, we'll edit that out. But we never got around to it. So all the edits all stayed in for 200 episodes.
Because I was the one editing the podcast and I didn't feel like actually editing it.
Yeah, and it was too much trouble.
Now we have Ross editing these.
I'm just have a sip of this while you continue to talk.
Come a little closer because you're slipping off camera.
I'm slipping in the slippery. All right.
Yeah,
I said I was gaping in the gapery the other day. It was unbelievable.
By the way, I want to give a shout out to our friend Brian Knapp because it is him. He is the reason that this is now a video podcast. He said, you guys are, it's really funny, but I want to see you reading these nonsensical things. And I said to him,
see us waving
how is that going to work? But I remember I said, oh, that's not going to work because sometimes Mike will be making some weird gesture at me that'll make me burst out laughing. And we can't possibly put that on camera.
No.
We just decided that in those cases we actually would
edit it out.
So some things do get edited out.
Now, early on, you thought someone said something. You said,
okay, oh my goodness.
And it turned into the lavender bag of Picthos. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah. Okay. So back in the earlier days when I was handling all of the customer service for Mike Mandel Hypnosis myself, realizing that I should never do that.
No.
I can lose my patience sometimes with people who don't have much of a brain. Let fire myself and get anyway. So I think I wrote you an email and I said something about somebody who had written an email to us. And I said, this person has been drinking from.
No, you said sipping
from the bag of. And then
Beep.
beep, beep, beep. We were not going to say it, but I said something that was deeply offensive. Now, the funny thing is this has turned into a wonderful source of comedy. We've realized it's accidental context-free humor,
Yes.
essentially.
Yes.
So whatever I said, the offensive thing that I wrote
Which I
in
know,
the
but won't
email,
say. Yeah.
sipping from a bag of beep.
Yeah.
Buddy
I thought
boy
he
here,
said sipping from the bag of Picthos.
Picthos.
That sounded ancient Greek, and I
sounded-
love the Iliad and I love the Odyssey. So I'm studying Greek, so I thought this was really funny. So I started saying I made a backstory.
You did,
about Picthos. He made the
Menelaus
silver bag and Menelaus, and they put lavender and lilac
lavender
in
and
it,
silver line threads.
and people would sip from this.
And become stupid.
Forever. So whenever
Yeah.
somebody was stupid, phoning us or writing to us, Chris would say, "This person's been sipping from the bag of Picthos."
Mhm.
So feel free to use it. Now that
So
sort of
that's-
started
and
everything
that's-
moving.
That was when I think early days, I didn't really get context-free humor yet.
Doesn't
You
get
taught
it
this to
now.
me. I mean, I've
There's
been
nothing to get. That's the humor.
osmosis, right? Over the years. But that's when I started to realize how funny this was. In fact, they become like inside jokes, but that we're willing
Extended
to let
to the
everyone
world.
else
Yeah,
in
we'll
on,
let you in
right?
on it. Yeah.
And then they are just so much fun. So sipping from the bag of
No,
Picthos was
this-
one of the first.
And we got into the Chris and Jeff show because Chris was sending
Yeah,
me some emails,
This was great.
and I would respond Chris, and then I just leave out the H in Chris, and so it'd be CRIS.
CRIS.
Then I write the next response be CRISS. Then it became CARYS, and it just got. And he just dealt with this so brilliantly. When he responded to me, he never even
So I had
mentioned
been
it.
responding, okay, Mike, blah, blah, blah,
and I'm sending
Mike.
Chris KRYSS.
And he was spelling my name weirder
stranger
and
and
weirder.
stranger, and he never acknowledged it. That was the genius of it.
I never acknowledged
And
it.
then he just wrote to me one day, and he just said, "Hey Jeff,
Not
call
one
me
day. It was at the end of the chain.
at the end of the chain, but
It was so my name,
JEFF. He's gone
Yeah.
from Mike to Jeff in one jump." And I said, "This is freaking
and
brilliant."
that's where the Chris and Jeff show came from.
So then we brought in the ukulele and saying, "It's the Chris and Jeff show, not the Jeff and Chris show." And then I'd sing Christabel and Jeff show, but he always ignored Christabel. He never would go there, so I just let it drop. I thought it was probably better for a friendship. It was a Coleridge name.
That
Now,
makes
listen,
me think of when my mom, if she wanted to annoy me, she'd call me Chrissy. Right?
Oh, that's horrible.
When I was like a little boy. Chrissy.
stop it. That's really weird. That should be left in the annals of history and not
Yes.
dug out with some sort of disimpacting.
Now
finger.
people are going to email me, say, hey, Chrissy.
I know. Now, then we got into I don't know when we started the stupid beginning that always began. Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know? And then I cued Chris in how to laugh. I taught him to go,
I had to learn this.
Yeah, he actually had to do the laugh right. And then we both
the
jumped
final,
in. These are days of victory.
But there was the final, and then these are days of victory because, of course,
man.
what makes them victorious? What are these days? It's essentially context free.
Pretty much.
Because all days are days of victory.
Now, I'm
if
just
you're
having a
having
sip
fun.
of this. Well, you
Perfectly
introduced
ordinary.
the concept of the ant-proof shizjig products.
Okay, so I don't even remember how the heck this came up, but you had this idea that we were going to create our own series of fake commercials for the podcast. And I thought that was a brilliant idea because we could have serious, and it would give Mike an outlet. We could still have this serious stuff that I crave.
We sort of let the pressure out of my comedic thing so I could get back to
so
serious.
we could have some really stupid commercials.
But you remember how it started?
And
it was the Fritaging clowns.
The Fritaging clowns
paid for
commercial.
by the
Yeah, it was
Society
it was an ending to one of our earlier podcasts. You know, this
Preceding
episode has
podcast.
been
Financed
financed
by
in part
contributions.
by contributions and donations
from Canadian
the
lawyers
Canadian lawyers in defense of wrongly accused
and
convicted
Fritaging
Santa
and birthday party clowns.
currently on death row. And we would record, and Mike would write these things out, and then I'd be the one reading them. And this is generally the way the podcast works. Okay, just inside story here. I never review the podcast material in advance.
No.
Even this one here, I have not looked at.
I always
so the stupid jokes and commercials, the lawn tree blooms, whatever it is, I am reading it for the first time. And so there will be retakes.
He's hearing it
and
for the first time as he reads it.
That's why we get some great B-roll. Usually Ross will throw in some outtakes at the end of me hilariously stumbling
trying to get
through
it.
But yeah, that was, I remember we would read that slowly and then speed it up, right? So it would,
yeah, but
and
pitch
match
for
it.
Fritaging clowns.
So it would still sound like it was read in the proper pitch of a human.
And this turned into this Shizjig Corporation. He came up with this beautiful name, SHY.
Yeah. How did I come up with that?
ZZIGG. I don't know. And then I started saying, all of our fine Shizjig products are 100%
Ant-proof.
ant-proof. And that is a nod to Firesign Theater, who I used to love in the 70s. And they would talk about ant-proof casters in one. And I thought that's freaking
Ant-proof
brilliant.
casters.
So I'm
The world's
acknowledging
maker
Firesign
of
Theater. But you started doing this character voice who did the Shizjig Corporation.
Dave
Shizjig.
Dave
the president.
Shizjig, the father. Yeah, or the CEO. We didn't even know it was
CEO,
Dave
no.
Shizjig yet.
Right.
Because it was a...
But you started doing that wonderful voice. And then, of course, we
Hi.
introduced Gus Grissom. Everything changed.
I'd like to tell you all a story about a particular felt. Yeah, it was something like that. It was that voice.
Yes,
right?
well, it was
Hi.
even more that voice than
And
that
it became
voice.
Danny's father.
It became, but that's later
We'll get
on the
that
list.
later,
Don't
okay.
jump ahead. We'll edit that out. Now, Gus Grissom got into the podcast.
Okay, this is funny.
I like Gus Grissom.
We are big Gus Grissom fans.
He was a true, in my mind, as a Brit who lives in Canada, he was a true American hero. Grissom took on the system when the
What are you trying to say, Mike?
capsules
Are you having a
and
stroke?
Yeah, I think so. The capsule and everything. He thought they wanted a window and all this, and he hung a lemon on it. Grissom was great. And he never got to meet the president or anything. They sort of screwed him around. So we started spreading the rumor after he died.
So what's the real story? That
He died on pad 13.
He died on
in a
the
fire.
launch pad.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Mhm.
But
It
we
was an
liked
accident.
Gus Grissom. So we started
We
getting him into
revived
the
him.
podcast. So he's still alive, like Elvis.
We invented Gus Grissom's sightings.
Yes, and it was always, I'd know that brush cut anywhere. And it was always the stupidity people would wait for. Grissom was described as being very fit, but a little tired around the eyes.
He looked reasonably fit and in good shape, but a little tired around the eyes.
Now, this got so crazy
because I got
that one woman actually wrote to Chris.
Okay, no. I have to see if we still have the voicemail. Okay, so our business phone number on the website is connected to a voice over IP service because it's just a really low cost way of having a business phone line.
Can't sweat the story.
Anyway, the point being, voicemails get archived as a WAV file and
Losing
emailed
interest.
to us automatically.
Yeah.
So my wife and family and I, we're up at her parents' place, the cottage near. In an area near Wilberforce, Ontario. We're just hanging
What's
out
the
for
weather
the summer.
like up there?
And I get this voicemail on my phone and I play it and I just start laughing hysterically. And I contact you right away and say, buddy, we just got a lady who left us a voicemail, sweet lady. And she said, I want to hear more about this Gus Grissom sighting because she was from the town in Indiana where he was born and raised. And she said, and she was very serious. She said, we always suspected that he wasn't really dead. And she went on and on. Like she wanted to know more about this. And I couldn't believe. So we just kept doing these Gus Grissom sightings. We didn't know they were going to become a theme.
No. And then Rick Green, who's an excellent hypnotist and trainer, good friend of ours.
Kalamazoo,
former police
Michigan,
captain,
former captain of the police force.
He brought to the training in Toronto a painting of Gus Grissom
so
and
we
presented
wrote him
it
into
to
the
me.
podcast.
And he wrote on it, to my greatest fan, Mike Mandel,
Mm-hmm.
see you soon, meaning I was going to freaking die, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So anyway, Gus Grissom.
But we had Rick Green having a Gus Grissom sighting at the University of Toronto campus at the time where we were holding the class. We have no relationship.
Then we had an Ontario policewoman, Maggie, came up, handed me an envelope. She said, a man with a brush cut just handed me this outside and it's open. Happy birthday, Mike, Gus Grissom.
That's
It just got so crazy. Anyway, let's leave Gus behind. He's not dead. Uncle Bud. Let's talk about Uncle Bud.
Because this was a trend for a while.
We're going to rocket through these fast.
Yes,
because
we
we're
are.
going to go get to lunch because we're going to have some booze. Now listen. Got some here. Not alcoholics. Not there's anything wrong with it if you are.
Who's Uncle Bud?
Uncle Bud was Bud Ralston. You can Google him and look at him in Internet Movie Database.
He was your great
He was my mother's uncle, meaning my great uncle. He was in Coronation Street in England. He was in Z cars at TV shows. And he died, I think he was about 102, 103 or something in a Manchester nursing home.
You will outlive him.
He was in the Sherlock Holmes series. I hope not. But Uncle Bud, he was in the First World War. He lost an earlobe to a German bullet. And he'd go back to these stories. We'd be having supper with the family. And he'd suddenly get the 1,000-yard stare and go back to these times. And he'd say, here, I recall it was the most extraordinary thing. And he'd be staring. Okay. Anyway, so he got into the into the podcast as Uncle Bud with his stories of the war. Mr. Thompson, I gotta tell you,
he was the narrator of all the Dennis Bryce Morgan humor.
Which brings us to Dennis Bryce Morgan and Henry Squatter. Now, Chris, somebody said to me, are you Dennis Bryce Morgan and is Chris Henry Squatter? No, not at all. He is not Henry Squatter. He's not a target. He's a smart, savvy freaking guy. But without the malice, I am Dennis Bryce Morgan.
You're the Joker who doesn't actually hurt people.
Bryce Morgan is a cleverest chap. Do anything. Remember when he could speak Brilly? Brilly, which is the language spoken by the Spangler iron merchants in the Harappan River Valley. Only 600 people in the world speak it, and Bryce Morgan could speak it. Cleverest chap. Wonderful thing. He wants to sell you one of these horseshoes, Squatter. I don't want any of his bloody iron.
It was insane.
Squatter was just beaten down by Bryce Morgan. Bryce Morgan was malicious and a bastard, and I'm realizing psychologically, calling Dr. Freud, thinking back to being bullied incessantly as a child before becoming a jiu-jitsu instructor. This doesn't happen anymore. You heard me. Anyway, that really is a theme running through this. We had Dennis Bryce Morgan beating down Henry Squatter. Finally, when he had the post-mortem erection, when Lady Melbury leaned over his couch and he died. And then
and then we realized we could still bring him back.
And we just go back to earlier events.
Other stories, yeah.
So anyway, I see there was a lot of that where somebody who was nice, like Squatter, was being oppressed by a bit of a bastard, which kind of was my life when I was a kid.
Now, to add a little value, because I insist, with the Dennis Bryce Morgan stories, you would usually jump in your car, start driving to my house where the studio is.
Takes an hour to get here.
And as you were driving over, you'd usually come up with some just keywords or key themes, but you would never script the Dennis Bryce Morgan story. You would never write them in detail.
No.
In fact, not a single one of them has ever been written down in advance.
Shame.
I mean, maybe somebody transcribes them later. But how did this happen? You'd get an idea, and then you would just run with it unconsciously. It was essentially made up on the spot.
It was
every
stream of consciousness. Yeah, I got a fast unconscious mind. I'm shit in a lot of it. Can we say shit?
Yeah, sure.
In a lot of areas of my life
today. So there we go.
Yeah, but yeah, I've got the unconscious stuff pretty good. Now,
okay.
So we got from Uncle Bud to Dennis Bryce Morgan, but this led to these war stories, and we kept referring to brown paper dipped in vinegar.
Yeah, it wasn't really much of a hut.
Yeah, it went over to his mansion one evening. Well, not much of a mansion, really, just a few bits of brown paper painted with vinegar and stapled together. It just makes no sense.
All the brown paper. Remember you got a gift of brown paper?
Everything. Maggie gave me a ton of stuff. We kept it because Heather said you can never get rid of it.
It's the best.
Colonel Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe.
Okay.
Here's the old Colonel. Everybody loved the old Colonel. He's a bit of a dick, but his name was so good. Peter Fitzwadsworth Smythe. Put him back. I got to bring him in. But Chris, we're rocketing through these, and that's good. What about the Johnnies?
Okay, so you had 3 Johnnies, which were Johnny Bortman, Johnny Leifhimniatswo, and
everyone's favorite,
Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia. And so one day, and I'd heard you say this before, I thought it was funny, right? These are funny. And we were at a pub after jiu-jitsu class. I remember we were at before it burned down, some arsonist.
Arms?
No, the Loaded Dog. Remember the Loaded Dog?
Oh, gosh, yeah. That burned down too.
Eglinton, or was it on Eglinton?
I was nowhere near there, Yana.
Was it on Eglinton or Lawrence?
Lawrence.
Okay, it was on Lawrence, right. And we used to go there after our jiu-jitsu class in Scarborough when we were at the gym, whatever. And I remember Ryan saying to you, okay, so what are the 3 Johnnies again? He's trying to get you to explain how to say their names. And
right.
That's when I took an interest. It's just, I remember going.
Which is cause for concern.
So I'm driving home that night in my Tesla, of course. I'm waiting for you to make that joke.
2 of them now.
Yeah. And I'm repeating after, okay, Johnny Bortman, Johnny Leifhimniatswo. And then you had coached me on how to say Ding Tila, Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia.
So it's easy to remember, bringing the right brain. And he was the most well-liked Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia. And people call him Tilasia for short. Oh, we saw Tilasia the other day.
And you started adding in more Johnnies.
It grew. So it became Johnny Bortman, Johnny Leifhimniatswo, Johnny Brookman Ding Tilasia, Johnny Suleiman Class Philo Aravwantave, Johnny Tabiq Tabakiu Buktanazwan,
Johnny Hitler,
Johnny Blickerton, Kurt Teppervine,
Stentorian Alaklaka,
Johnny Kelperlism, Johnny Melticlips, Johnny Chicken Raw Lips, Johnny Balsamy Ploy, and Johnny Baboon.
Johnny Baboon, right.
Which then turned into Johnny Baboon called. He wanted me to tell you that Philip Ridaway died last night.
screaming.
Yeah.
That's it.
And just phone people and say that.
So
which is fabulous.
random nonsense. Yeah, Philip.
The Johnnies
Ridaway.
kept growing.
What
And
was
these
it?
were
Johnny Baboon called last night
and told
me to tell you that Philip Ridaway died last night.
Johnny Baboon didn't call last night. Johnny Baboon called and
Called
told me to tell you that Philip Ridaway died last night screaming. Just phone somebody and say that to them and hang up. It's fantastic. Now, this is all World War I stuff, all tied to Uncle Bud. And I said, you can Google Bud Ralston to this day. He was an actor. He was a great guy.
Be a two-parter, man.
This leads us to the what?
This is going to be a two-parter.
No, it's not. We're going to get through it all, no matter how long it takes.
There's just an
We're gonna
insane level of nonsense
Lord
here.
and Lady Melbury.
Okay.
Now, the Melburys were so freaking weird. Lord Melbury's got the monocle and the mustache and a stiff upper lip and a, ramrod stiff spine. And his wife is this woman in her 40s who looks like she's in her 20s. Raven black hair, piercing green eyes, a finely turned ankle.
A finely turned
so
ankle.
we're going
which
to
has a
Victorian terminology.
reference.
And a low-cut décolletage, a shapely body. And Lord Melbury's this rigid, repressed Victorian, and Lady Melbury's banging half the guys in the regiment, especially Bryce Morgan.
Bryce Morgan.
So
he's just up
the
there.
most bizarre thing is they've got a freaking horse called Ballgasm. I was trying to tell me that you were drinking at that moment.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to say, I thought I had made that term up because it just sounded funny. And he's always in the 6th race at Belmont. And I said, take every penny you have, put it in the 6th race at Belmont on Ballgasm. It just sounded funny.
Okay, and then it takes a really weird turn because
you'll explain.
Yeah, I will explain because I'm very upset with you about this. No,
I'm rather
so
cross.
you found out it's actually a word in the whatever you call it, the Urban Dictionary or something. It's like not a real word. It's
so we had
made
to
up.
stop it.
All words are made up. And you said, okay, we're actually not going to be able to say that anymore because it turns out it has a meaning.
Yeah.
And then you decided, screw it, we're going to use it anyway.
And I did, but then I stopped again.
And then
so that was good.
Now we're talking about it.
You're like, Chris, because you're still just Danny.
Dad,
Talk about Danny.
Okay, so you came up with this concept of this kid, Danny, that would come home and tell his dad about something he was really proud of in school that day.
Just looking for affirmation.
And you played the role of Danny, and I played the role of Danny's father.
Who became Dave Shizjig.
Turned out later to be Dave Shizjig. We didn't know that, but it just happened. Context-free humor. And it was a great piece of comedy in my mind because it had real value. We talk about it because we're making fun of the idea that when someone has initiative and desire and they're interested in something and then they get shot down, by an authority figure like their father or their mother.
Yeah,
or their
it's really a
teacher.
shot at the idiot father.
It's like
what
support your kids, man. David. Support your children, encourage their dreams and their everything that they want. and Danny's father which is me in this case, is the exact opposite. Oh, son, don't be getting too big for your britches there.
You're still just
Danny. Still just Danny.
It's the Bryce Morgan dynamic with Henry Squatter. You have the person in power who is oppressing the person who doesn't have power. And this is all, like I said, this is stuff from my own life. And that's, I guess, how this comes out, because I'm so opposed to it, I have to mock it. Now, let's get on to
There's just way too much here.
Honey Hallmark, the girl who loves greeting cards.
Oh, that was one of your originals.
Rock it through these. Watch me rock it through these. One of the original, Honey Hallmark,
the girl who loves greeting cards.
She's got
crazy red hairs and she drives a school bus, but she's no different than the rest of us, for she's Honey Hallmark, the girl who loves greeting cards. Hey,
the girl who loves greeting cards.
Hey.
Now, anyway, here's a girl, her last name is Hallmark, becomes obsessed with greeting cards, drives a school bus. We'll edit that out. And all the zany fun that develops. The zany
and it's
fun.
the use of words like zany.
I know, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anyway, she's crazy. It brings us to Dave Ambrose.
Dave
Ambrose, man.
People's
He's
physicist, dude.
scroll, and everything he calls someone is some sort of a reference to the No, more the
tail. Yeah, I don't know what you want to call it.
The pouch, man. Dave Ambrose, the people's physicist. He shows up in Cydonia.
That's right.
A recording. He's got an IQ estimated at over 400, and he designs the cold fusion system to liberate the atmosphere from Mars's surface, which is all going back to Alternative 3. Why the JFK assassination, Chris? Jack Ruby, Dallas,
Jack
Dealey
Ruby.
Plaza. I mean, over and over and over. Clay Shaw, Clay Bertrand.
There's so many references to the JFK assassination.
I stood in Dealey Plaza. I worked Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio many years ago, touring in the south of the U.S. and loved Texas. I think the finest people on earth, wonderful people. But I had to go to Dealey Plaza, took a cab there and just stood there and looked around in the school book depository. It stayed in my mind. So I, for no apparent reason, just started working it into the podcast.
You did.
30 years later. Now, what about Spunky and Beezer?
Spunky and Beezer. That I have no idea where that came from.
I don't either.
But I remember you coming one day and you just came up with this and you said, the only show where you're Spunky and you're Beezer.
And it's like, what the hell does that mean?
So like,
Spunky,
who's
Spunky and Beezer? It's almost honey Hallmark.
And Spunky almost
only
sounds like
show where
a dirty word
but
or
it's not.
something.
Yours-
And Beezer's
it's-
just weird.
I see two dogs' heads.
Yes.
The only show where you're Spunky
and you're Beezer.
It's just nuts. Now, that leads us to Jenny and the Smooth One.
Oh, which
Now,
is
to
okay, now,
me-
this came from an actual singer. I didn't know this.
This is my suit. No, he's thinking of Tom Waits.
That's it.
And I did my pseudo horrible impersonation of Tom Waits with Abraham Lincoln walks at midnight in Springfield. Abraham Lincoln walks at midnight. Now,
Tom Waits is an actual singer.
Oh, he's
like
fabulous. He's a star. But Jenny and the Smooth One, the humor in this is you got this woman and your husband and he's a derelict and this and this and this. And then finally it turned into Jerry and the Smooth One as well to make it fair.
Right.
And why don't you do the old fire escape and this and the biker
Get
bar and pick up a smooth one?
Now, you know,
Now, we never define what a smooth one is. It's left to the imagination. Is it it can't like a bottle
That's
of beer.
the beauty of
That's the
context-free
beauty
humor.
of context-free humor. And there's
What
no one
is a
more
smooth one?
context-free than Spunkaluccio.
Okay, so what is a smooth one? Spunkaluccio. It was a strange Italian boy.
Yeah, and
Strange.
that,
We'd
that
have
pale blue
pointing-
stocking
pale
cap
blue
he wears.
hat.
I see him as a Pinocchio cousin sort of thing. But
We're gonna
he's
have to
just-
make logos for all of
He's
these.
just weird. He's always causing problems, and you run into him in a lot of the stuff, but not so much as in The Little White Balloon, Chris.
Okay, so
There
there's
was a boy in the middle of June
with
He
a
went
pet
out on a
raccoon.
tune with his pet raccoon.
Raccoon.
The little white balloon, it flew to the moon.
and
Now he's
now
dead.
he's dead
because it flooded his bed. We're not even going anywhere with that
Okay,
one.
we're not. But
Okay.
it's actually a story from your real
Yeah.
life. We're not going to tell it 'cause
From
we
my
don't-
childhood. We're not going there.
for
How about-
safety reasons.
I feel like
we're not
Larry
gonna tell.
Gomez, the man who might be Mexican.
Okay, so you came one day with this idea of a fake commercial about a man who might be Mexican. I think we turned it into other versions of this
Eventually,
too. A
might
man
be
who
French, might be Chinese, or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
And it was he had a name like Larry, but he had the last name Gomez.
And
And
then
he
say,
would go in, and if he asked for extra guacamole,
You just asked for guacamole. Are you Mexican, Mr. Gomez?
and he goes, "I'm not sure. I might be."
Larry Gomez.
And we
the
just
man
thought
who
that
might
was
be Mexican.
hilarious.
Tonight on the Gus Grissom Network. So they all start to interlock.
This
Now,
is where the interconnection started.
let's talk about the
happening.
bagman of Edward the Confessor.
Oh, you.
'Cause this has
yeah.
actually got him with this joke. Edward
Yeah.
the Confessor at about 1000 AD was the first person to use prestige in hypnosis. Here's the actual content, folks.
Mhm.
And he would do the royal touch, lay hands on somebody who had what was known as the king's illness, which is scrofula. And he would then the person would often get well because it's psychogenic and all these different things. And he'd give him a gold coin.
Scrofula.
The chance of meeting the King of England, Edward the Confessor, was about the same as meeting the Pope. So it didn't happen very often. I created a whole
So
backstory.
Edward the Confessor
Is
is
real.
a real character.
and all the hypnosis stuff is
And
attributed
Mike
to him as real.
invented this backstory about his army.
His elite 12 men who were so tough that they wore a leather bag with holes cut in it instead of trousers.
And let their wedding tackle
In the
hang
front, they
out.
made a slit so their wedding tackle was fully showing to show I'm so tough that
I don't care.
I don't care. Bring your swords, bring your spears. I can handle it.
Which came from the actual truth of
Edward-
body language, the idea of taking up space.
Yeah, and offering the
Cobra
wedding
is up-
tackle
if,
for
if
attack.
if you take up space, and especially
and you
people,
don't cover the wedding tackle.
right,
You
you're,
present
you're
it.
indicating, hey,
Right, I think we stayed on this point probably long enough. Now, here's the interesting thing. So, the bagman of the Confessor, I meant because they're wearing a leather bag, but
Right.
everybody thought it was because the wedding tackle were presented. People wanted to join this organization. So, in Las Vegas at Hypnothoughts Live, we had
did
an initiation.
indoctrination, yeah.
Initiation for the
yeah.
bagman of Edward the Confessor with the singing, When drumming comes and juju, a hand comes from the wall, releasing bursts of fragrance into the banquet hall.
Banquet hall.
Get it
thank you.
right. He's the
Yes.
Chamberlain of the Bagman.
We
of
would
Edmonton
edit that
Professor.
out
I'm the
normally.
Grand Warden.
Right.
And we had a ceremony. People signed up for
We've
it.
got
They
video
learned
of
the
this.
secret handshake. Do we do?
Yeah.
Okay, more about that later. Now, this brings to Brado, Eddard, and Duder. This is Hypno North. Meaford, Ontario is up near Lake Huron near Owen Sound. I just like how they talk up there and that.
used to actually be there.
I used to go up there and that. And that's how they talk up there. It's very close to the Ottawa Valley voice. But we just started bringing this in. Then we brought in Eddard.
Did you tell me there was an actual donut store named Donuts and Such? Donuts and
my
Such.
friend Brad called it Donuts and that.
Donuts
and
and
that's
that.
How all the and that
That's
came
where
up.
the and that came from.
So we created Hypno North Meaford, where Brado's doing his podcasting on his iPhone 5 and all this, and the iPhone 6.
Which is
and,
only funny because that was probably one of our first iPhones, and now that it's like 7 years old.
Yeah.
When we refer
And
to it.
Duder being, of course, the male version of Dorothy, because his mom was obsessed with Wizard of Oz.
Duder.
Just nuts, and they're all hypnotists.
And
Then
Eddard is a real character, isn't he?
well, we're not going there now. Gaping in the gapery.
Okay.
Like Jack the frickin' Gaper.
Gaping in the gapery. I
was
don't know
gaping
what.
in the gapery once. I caught myself, my jaw open.
What
just
is gaping in the gapery?
It's gaping, hanging with your jaw. I'm like you're stupid. And I said we should create an actual room for doing that called a gapery.
This is the idea that the formula is you're doing something in the
room designed for that purpose.
Yeah, like a room. We're just we're
drinking in the drinkery.
yeah, exactly. You're
Okay.
drinking in the drinkery.
Right. So then we started saying like Jack the frickin' Gaper, because in high school we used to say in like Jack the tree snake.
Yeah,
In like Jack the
Jack
Bear.
the Lad.
In like Jack the Ripper. In like Jack the Lad. And then it became, if it's really bad, in like Jack the Poo Smell.
That was you can only use this in
a disgusting situations. Yeah.
In like Jack the Poo Smell, right?
Yeah, it's like if you're having dinner with some friends and Adolf Hitler shows up.
Oh, that would
you
be
say,
bad.
He just came in
He
like
just
Jack
came in
the Poo
like,
Smell.
yeah,
Yeah.
welcome. But
Now, what about, whoa, this stuff really comes out?
Where did that come
I don't
from?
know.
So some point along the way,
Something
I think
spilled.
that we maybe, you tip something over and
on your
liquid,
computer.
and you say, whoa, this stuff really comes
But then we
out.
started applying it to everything. Chris would try to put in an electrical lead and it would fall over and say, whoa,
this stuff really comes
And
out.
the key is to jump in while the other guy's saying it and join him without warning, which is always
joining in the joinery.
right. Joining in the joinery, like
Right.
Jack the frickin' joiner.
Joiners,
Then we
right.
got into Bavarch, which of course comes from
Bavarch
really
was a made-up
language
word.
of Spangler iron merchants. I'm going to cough in the coughery.
We will edit
I'm
that
all right.
out.
We'll edit that out.
Not.
Yeah. And
So
Bavarch
Bavarch was,
has over 200 meanings in Brilly.
Yes.
So if you say it right, Bavarch, it's a greeting.
Hello.
If you say it wrong, Bavarch, it means you're a bastard and the person is authorized to hit you.
I think it even means F off in certain
And yeah, it
circumstances.
depends on the tonality,
There's a whole
whether or
bunch.
not you're looking at them or just off to the
It's
side.
a universal Brilly word, Bavarch.
Yes,
There we go.
Bavarch, to which I say Bavarch.
We used to park
Lucci.
on the street and you'd say Bavarch when you get out of your car.
Yes, we still do. Lucci, we would yell just for something to do.
Lucci-io.
Ending a podcast, say Lucci, because it's meaningless.
Mhm.
Vumpio and Thrustio, they're great words because they
Vumpio?
sound like horrible sexual acts, but they're not.
Vumpio.
They came out in one of the
Vumpio.
podcasts where Uncle Bud was saying,
And they were making
staying in the hotel
Vumpio.
in Rome, and there were a couple of Italian bed jockeys upstairs making Vumpio and Thrustio all night.
Which really
Bed
sounds
jockeys.
bad.
Okay, so look,
Yeah.
we're rocketing here.
Oh,
Guinea pig
man.
laugh. I just find that
Where did
funny.
that come
I've
from?
done it
You
since
made it
high
up?
school. I used
Okay.
to make people laugh with it. I've started doing it. Then people started writing saying, stop doing the guinea pig laugh, which of course encouraged me to do it more. The
Hey,
connection gesture.
You know we're going overtime here. We're giving
I know, we're going
extra
extra value.
So when did the connection? Okay,
I don't know.
It was after we turned this into this was
Yeah.
fairly recent. We turned
Was.
this into a video podcast
We
thanks
did.
to Brian, who told us to.
Two.
Ross took over the editing. Well, he had already taken over the editing of the
Right.
audio, but now he was responsible for the video. And as you were doing this gesture, he thought it would be
Pushing the
great to
lower lip
add
forward of the
in
tongue.
a sound, like imagine the sound of a thick rope being pulled.
Yeah, like
tightly.
someone being hanged.
And you listened to it and said,
That sounds like something
you
else.
thought it was toilet sounds.
I thought it was like a gross.
and scolded him and
exusion
said,
of
take
gas
those
stuff." I
toilet
said,
sounds
"This is
out of this
not-
podcast.
This is clever humor. This isn't frat boy humor. Okay,
and
on
it
to the next one.
wasn't. It was a rope tightening. Anyway,
Yeah, it's gone anyway.
but you
Which
were
brings us to
wrong. Okay.
that was the woman. My wife and I at a restaurant sitting with her son and daughter, and she was elderly. And at the end of every sentence, she'd go, huh? It might have been clearing her throat at one time, but it turned into,
It turned into a very
beautiful musical tones.
auditory
just bizarre.
decoration.
Just bizarre. My wife wanted to go over and kill her. Now, look, one I love, and we're closing quickly here. Isn't that the hospital where you died?
Remember London? We
I
had
was in
so
Manitoba.
much fun with that.
We did. I was in Winnipeg.
You were in Winnipeg.
In the 70s, probably circa 1977.
Backseat of a cab?
78, must be 77, 78. Backseat or a seat of a cab with three girls, hot girls from the, I'm looking at myself, just watching my gestures. Yeah, these three hot girls, they were at a Halloween party at the university. And they said, when you come to this party with us? And I said, sure. So on the way there, one girl passed a hospital in the cab. One pointed to it, turned to the other and said, isn't that the hospital where you died? And she went, oh, shut up. I found it hilarious. So Chris and I created the song, isn't that the hospital where you died? They couldn't revive you no matter how they tried. And the doctors have no answer, but they fear it might be cancer. Isn't that the hospital where you died?
You're just looking
I know, it's just hilarious. So that was idiotic, I know.
And that's where we got the idea, and we still haven't executed on this, but we need to create some animated GIFs with these.
Yeah, have fun doing that.
And
I'm going to
upload them so that people can use them. People can use them on social media.
What about the Alice, Chris?
The Alice. Okay, so this is a completely.
I'm going to finish this.
It's a name, but it's a made-up name to represent a French letter.
A French letter. Now, when I was a kid, very young, probably about 8, another kid said to me, "There's this thing that men and women can buy that they can have sex with each other." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, you can buy it in a drugstore. It's a device, and the boy puts his in it, and the girl puts hers to it." He's describing a condom. And I imagine something made of styrene plastic, some sort of assembled kit. And I'm thinking, why? And he said, final words, his name was Phil, and he said, I think it's called an Alice.
So it's actually real. There you go. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, man. Okay, isn't the real issue here, Chris, that we're going over time and we need to get to lunch?
Yeah, the real
issue. What are you prepared to do? So
this comes from I think it was a podcast I was listening to where there was a guy who was positioned as a real expert in communication and influence.
Okay, losing interest.
And he suggested that he used this absurd example. I can't remember what the example was, but just trust me, it was totally absurd. He was explaining this pattern
in the explanatory.
Isn't the real issue pattern. Which is, so if somebody asks a question and you want to redirect it, it would say, well, maybe you'd say something like, I need a new iPad. Well, isn't the real issue here that I'm trying to come up with something a bit more reasonable than the stupid example he came up with? Isn't the real issue here that we just need to be a bit more careful with our spending, and perhaps if we get the thing dealt with appropriately or cleaned up or whatever, blah, 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 we'll be able to continue using this for some time. You're trying to shift directions. But he gave some totally absurd example, like way out in left field.
Right.
And I just thought it was hilarious. So we turned into the isn't the real issue challenge, which is when someone brings something up.
So
and then you jump in.
Prices are going up all over the place and the government needs to fix it. Isn't the real issue here?
And you would start with a reference that sounds like you're talking about the price.
And then turn it into, the Spangler Iron Merchants or something. And what are you prepared to do about it? Today.
Right. So it was the baby steps away from the original plot. So isn't the real issue that there are children in other parts of the country that whatever it is, and you go on and on and on. And there's a real art to it in terms of what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know, but I knew a fellow like you, a lot like you.
Isn't there really?
He died in a motorcycle accident. That was one of them. I don't know why that's on the list, but it's a good one. Now, Jerry was so right about you, Chris.
Okay, Jerry was so right about you. We've been using this for years. Where did this come from?
We came up with this as a nice little intervention when someone's being a dick. If you're in a group of people.
You just look at them.
And you look at him, you smile, shake your head knowingly, and you say, and here's the finessing of it I'll give you. You say, Jerry was so right about you.
Yeah.
And you can look at the other people and sort of smile like this is something you've all discussed when he wasn't around.
And the beauty is then people go, well, who's Jerry?
You say, I think you know.
Which is another line, I think you know. And what are you talking about?
I think you know.
And then what do you know? What are you talking about?
Jerry,
we say I'm talking about.
I think I'm talking about you. What do you mean by it? I mean you.
Yeah.
It's great.
My daughter does this now. If I say, what are you talking about? She goes, talking about you.
because this
It's
is how we
great.
do it, guys.
You say it with intention. This is how we do it
downtown.
Okay, where did that come from?
Well, it
We
came
were-
from the fact that we're ending the podcast, and I think it's a great way to go out.
We won't
We're
explain
not doing
it.
that. We're just
All
going
right.
to go out with some freestyle chanting. So start me off. Thanks again.
And
Good
good night.